Bar charts are a great way to visualize your data. The good thing is you can visually compare the data at a glance. Many organizations present their user surveys in the form of visual bar charts. As you can see on this example, we're looking at Stack Overflow's 2019 survey results. As you can see, they're mainly bar charts and they're very easy to visualize and understand. When developers are faced with a problem that involves data visualization, they usually turn to libraries like D3. D3 is great for most challenging visualization problems. If all you need is a basic bar chart, then to build one, all you need is a basic knowledge of ES6 principles and a basic understanding of SVG canvas drawing. In ES6, there is a feature called template literals, which is basically strings enclosed with backticks rather than single or double quotes. Now what this allows you to do is you can inject variables into it. This is handy to construct HTML template snippets, and if you combine it with arrow functions, you can have an arrow function return a template literal that has some data injected into it. You can use that as a handy way of constructing your HTML templates. So in this example, I am creating an SVG element with the width, height and color injected into it. Then I can use this returned value to render on our app. This tutorial has two parts. In the first part, we're going to build a React JS bar chart demo. Second part, we're going to rewrite that demo in Svelte. You need some basic knowledge of React for this, but not necessarily for Svelte. If you see my previous video on how to create a bar chart in React JS, then you can skip the first part and go to the second part for Svelte version. In this tutorial, we're going to be coding this monthly expenses bar chart. We're coding it in React.js. Now the important thing here is that at a glance we can tell what the highest expense is for the month. By looking at the chart, I know at a glance that I spent $180 this month on leisure. I know that because the bar is labeled with leisure and is colored purple, while all the other bars are colored as black. The bar chart also has a feature to refresh the chart. This is to simulate different months' data. So as you can see, I'm clicking the refresh button and the charts get updated and it's got new data being displayed. And as you can see, the highest expense is alternating between different expenses. The bar chart is also responsive. As you can see, I am dragging the corner and resizing the window, and it's resizing the bar charts as accordingly to the dimensions of the window. So that's what we're going to be building. Before we start, let's take a look at an overview of our chart app. In this diagram, on the left hand side, I've got three sections: the legend, SVG and a button. Now the legend has the keys, it's sort of a color code. The SVG element will contain the bars. The button, when clicked, will refresh the data. So there is a function associated with this button. We'll call it refresh chart. As you can see in the chart, we have the highest expense rendered as a purple bar. And so there is a need for a function to calculate the highest expense. So this will be another function, calculate highest expense. Let's dig a little bit deeper into the SVG chart element. What you see on the screen at the moment is the markup for the overall structure of the SVG element that we need to render for our chart. I have drawn a yellow box around the important attributes that we need to concentrate on for our chart to render properly. Under the first yellow box, we got the view box attributes. So I've given the value 00480,220. What this basically means is I've given a dimension of 480 width and 220 height, and that's the dimensions of our canvas, our drawing area. In the second box, I've given a width and a height, and this is the dimensions of the container. It's like a wrapper for the SVG canvas. As you can see, I've given a width of 100% and height of 70%. So there is a sort of a discrepancy with the canvas and the container dimensions. Now for our chart to scale properly, we need to specify a third attribute, which is the preserve aspect ratio. So this will work out the scaling ratio between the canvas and the container dimension. On the screen you can also see the markup for a rectangle. Now the rectangle elements represent the bars. The attributes for the rectangles, you have your X, Y value and width, height and a fill color. The width will be the same for all bars as 50 pixels. The X and Y values, we will need to do a simple calculation to work these out. If you don't understand how these things fit together, don't worry, you can still do the tutorial. So let's get started. I'm going to create a folder on the desktop called bar chart demo. I'm going to go into Visual Code and open up the folder. We go to the desktop and open up bar chart demo. Okay, next we need to install React. So go to terminal, new terminal, type in npx create React app. I'm going to call it bar chart app. Press enter. This may take a bit of time. So once that's finished, we're going to do some cleanup now. Okay, so we're going to go into the sidebar, the bar chart app, and we're going to go into the source, and we're not going to be needing many of these files. We won't be needing the setup test, service worker, logo. We're not going to need the index.css, app.test, and we're going to be using these three files, and we're going to get rid of everything else. So I'm just going to delete them. So now we got the three files that we need: app.css, app.js, and index.js. So I'm going to go into the app.css. We don't need all that, so I'm just going to delete. Okay, and in the app.css, we're going to delete the import logo. Okay, so we're going to keep the app.css. Alright, we don't need all this between the app div. Okay, so we're going to be be left with just the app div with the class name app, and also in the index.js we're going to delete everything referring to the service worker. Okay, so delete that, and in the header we're not going to use the index.css, and we're also going to remove the service worker reference there. So there you have it. This is what we're going to be having in the index.js. Right, so let me save that. Okay, so I'm going to go back into app.js now. Now to test that if we've got the app running, we can just put in a little message here. Okay, just going to put in this is our app message, and we're going to go into the npm scripts on the left hand corner. Okay, and we're going to click on start app. Okay, now that should open up the browser. Okay, so our app is running, so that's good. Now for this demo, we're going to be using use state and use effects, so I'm going to load that. Okay, next we're going to need some data for our app. Okay, so I've got an array of expenses. So it's got two items in there, name and expense. So the name is the name of the expense, and like phone, electricity, car, and the expense is the value of the expense. So phone is $150. Next, we're going to go to the app JSX, and we're going to rewrite this. So here we have a sort of a skeleton structure. So we're going to have a legend, okay, and then we're going to have a chart section, which is going to display the bar chart, and then we're going to have a button, and the button, when you click on it, it will refresh the data. So it will create generate another random set of numbers. Then when that is generated, the chart will get updated. So also you know, there is a function there on click. So on click, it will call a function there. So and within the chart component, you'll have a set of bars. So there'll be another component that we need to write, and there'll be other things like working out the highest expense, and a few other things. So I also want to highlight that we've got this empty element, which is in React, you need to always wrap your components with a wrapper, with something like a div or any other element. But in this case, we don't. To bypass it, you can put in an empty wrapper, so it doesn't display a when it renders. It doesn't render any div. So I just wanted to highlight that. Now we also need to declare some variables and constants. So that's what we're going to do next. So here are the values that we need to declare at the beginning. Okay, so we're going to have a state variable to store our expense data. So so we're using useState to set the state for that. So and we're initializing it with data, which is our variable, which expenses array. Okay, so next up we're gonna fix certain things so that this demo is going to be simple. Otherwise we're going to sort of complicate things, validating things and error checking. So we're going to fix certain things, like the maximum expense is going to be 200. So that's going to have an effect on the height. So we'll fix it, then we won't need to worry about going over very large. So then we got the chart height, which is maximum expense plus 20. So so it's just considering a margin there. And then we have each bar in the bar chart will be 50 pixels. The margin will be 30. And then the number of bars we're going to store it in number of bars, and it's a simple formula. Well, not formula, but it's the length of the array. So depending on, we got 6 items there, so number of bars is going to be 6. Then we've got the width, which is the number of bars times the bar width plus the margin. So it's working out the full length of SVG canvas where we're going to display the chart. So that's our variables and constants sorted out. So our chart component function will have children, width and height as parameters. Okay, so it will render an SVG element. Okay, so in the SVG element we have a view box. Okay, so in the view box I've set the view box as the initial values of 0, 0, and the dimensions of width and height that we fixed earlier. So and an SVG element also has a viewport, and the viewport is the width and height. So this is the view box, and this is what's how much we're going to see of the canvas, and this is the size of the SVG element. And we also set preserve aspect ratio x mid x meet. Sorry, it's x mid y max meet. Okay, so that's a setting for making SVG responsive. So so what it does is it will it's like in CSS when you use background size and background cover. You're sort of making it fit the background. So it's similar sort of technique. So let's preserve aspect ratio. There's an article on CSS tricks that describes how to scale SVG, make it responsive. So yeah, there's a section there. If you go down, there's a section for aspect ratio. Sort of explains about all this. Maybe a good idea to go and read that article. Gives you a better explanation. One thing I forgot to mention was that when I typed in the settings for the view box, I've used backticks rather than single quotes. Now, there's a difference between backticks and single quotes. This is what single quotes looks like, and this is what backtick looks like. So it's sort of an angled single quote. So you got to be careful of that, because backticks is an ES6 notation where you can if you want to render things strings and you can put in variables within those within the quotes. With single quotes you can't put in variables, because I've put in like a mix and match, like string values 0, 0, and these are variables. So that's one good thing about using backticks. You can mix and match strings and variables. So be careful of that. Okay, next I'm gonna revisit the button section. In the button I've put in a function on click, and it calls it function, and I haven't created the function yet. So I'm gonna do that now. So I'm gonna go back up to where I've declared all my constants and variables. Okay, so I'm gonna type in here. So I'm gonna call it okay, let refresh chart equals equals, and I'm gonna have a arrow function. And I'm just going to leave it empty at the moment. And also I'm going to have a constant, and I'm gonna have a function to create random numbers, random data. So when you click on refresh, it will create another set of data with random expenses. So I do create random data, and that will also be a arrow function. Okay, so if I save that, okay, so now when I go and run in the server, so I'm going to go into the server, so it's outputted the stuff that we put in the render part. So it's put in the button, and we should be able to, there is a SVG element in there. So if I go into the dev tools, and you can see there's an SVG that we defined in our script. So we've got an SVG with box 0, 0 and undefined, undefined. So the width and height we haven't given values, so it's put it as undefined. That's okay. And well, this is the view box. Then the actual width of the container is 100% and 70%. So and I've got the preserve ratio settings there. So we can put in like value for that quickly. Let's just say if I go back and I put in a value, say width equals 300, I'll make it 500, and height equals save that and okay, so it's given a width and a height, and so that's just to demonstrate. So I'm going to take that off because we don't want that. So I'm just going to take that off. Okay, so I saved it. So okay, so we've got that now. We just need to style the SVG box, and it was just give it some style so that we can see some colors and borders and things. Okay, so we're going to do the styling now. So I'm going to go into the app.css. Okay, so we're going to start off doing the styling. We're going to give the HTML element 100%, padding 0, margin 0. I'm going to use font Open Sans. We're going to set the box sizing to border box. Then going to give the body some width of 100%, height of 100%, and background color as sort of a grayish color. And we're going to set the body as flex, okay, so that way we can center everything. And so we've got justify content and align items and flex direction column, so that's going to center things. Okay, so we're going to start the buttons with just display block and width 100% and font size. Give it a for view height measurement. Okay, SVG, we're going to give it background color orange so we can see it. Now we got root width 50%. Now root is the default ID that React app sort of comes pre-built with when you use create React app on the command line to create a boilerplate. So we just use that here, so that we want to set that to 50%. So the legend, we're going to give it a font size of 2.5 view height, so it's sort of responsive with the height. And expense, we just style in the legend, which is giving a before element and giving it a little square. That's what we're doing there. Background color and width, giving it width and inline, and giving it the margin settings 0, 0.5 and 0.5 view height. So that just it's creating a little block for the legend, so you can see that in a minute. And I've got also set the highest expense for that as well. Oops. Yep. So if I save that, and I just want to go back and show you what I mean by if I go in there, legend. So I've got the legend there. Okay, so I've got an expense and highest expense. So, and I've used two different colors for this. Okay, so that's that. So I've saved this, and if we go into now I've got this canvas of orange. This is the SVG. This is the button, which is sort of 100%, and this is the legend. Okay, so if I sort of let me just see that. So if I drag the corner, it's responsive. So this is SVG sort of resizing according to the window. So It's responsive. Okay. Right, next thing that we need to do is we need to look at how we're going to render the bars. Okay, now if we go back into the chart component, so we got, well, in our main component, we got the, we render the chart component. Okay, and inside and in between the JSX tags for the chart, we've left it blank there at the moment, and for us to do the bars. Okay, so what we can do is, like, we can hard code the bars like this. Now I put in the markup for SVG rectangle. So if you see it, I've got two bars here, and I've given hard coded it x equals 0, y equals 0, and width of 50, and a height of 100. Okay, and the second bar is it goes across 70, and y is 0, and the width is 50, and the height is 150. So if I have a look at that in our app, okay, so we got two bars. Okay, if we look at the debugger, so we got that one, which is x0, y is 0. So it's starting from x0 and y0, that's that corner point there, and it's drawing a rectangle of height 100. And the next one is going across 70. So this one is going across 70, and the y is 0. So, and then it's drawing a rectangle 150 pixels high. Now in SVG, you're starting from the left corner, and that is x. X is going across and y is going down. So that's why y0 is on that level at the top, not at the bottom. So part of the way we need to render it properly from the bottom, we need to work out, we need to calculate the coordinates using the values I've given earlier. So that's what we need to do. Okay, so we are going to go back. We're just going to set it back to what it was. Okay, so in order to render the bars with our expenses values, so we need to loop through our data. So looking at each one and getting the expense and using the expense as the height of a bar chart. So we need to iterate through this and display it, render it in our SVG. Alright, so what we need to do is, so we've set the expense data as our data, you know, in our state, as the state for our app. So so expense data is initialized with the data value. So we need to map through that. We need to create a map command to go through it. So then within that map command, we're going to have a constant called bar height, which will pull the expense value from our data for each item. Then we're going to return a bar component. So the bar component, we need to define that now. Okay, so the bar component will have going to have a key value, and this is going to be the data name. The key value is something that React requires when you sort of iterate through different elements. It needs to distinguish between the elements. So we're creating sort of a number of bar rectangles, so we need to distinguish that, or React needs to know that. So then we need to give it an x value. So we need to work out the x value using the index of the. Okay, so we were in the map, when we're mapping through, it will have an index value. So the first item will be 0, then iterate through to 5. So we're taking the index value, then we're timesing it by the bar width, and we're going to plus a bit, we're going to add a bit of margin to it. So that's going to be that x value. So then we're going to work out the y value, which is the chart height minus the bar height. So it's basically the bar height is the expense value. So that's the y value. And the width is, we've set the width earlier at the top as bar width. So it's using that bar width value here. Then we got the height, and we're setting the height as the bar height. Then the highest expense, we're not going to do anything with that at the moment, so we will just leave that at the moment. Okay, so we're going to get an error now because we haven't defined the bar component. So this is just the JSX for the component that we're. So next we need to create a function for this bar component. So that's what we're going to do next. So we go down after chart component. So we're going to declare a function for our bar component. So it's going to be constant. It's going to be an arrow function. So it's going to have x and y and the width and height and expense name. So this is what we're passing through there. X. We worked out, how to work out the x value, y value, and we're putting it through there. So that's what these values are: x, y, and width, height, and expense name. So then we're going to have a we're going to tell it that we don't want a wrapper. So this is an empty tag that sort of tells React that we're not going to have a wrapper. So then within that we're going to have a rectangle. So this is going to actually draw the rectangle for the bar. So it's a rect tag with x value as what we put there, and the y value, and the width and the height, what we feed in, and it's going to be a color black. Okay, then we're going to have some text. Then we're going to display the height. The height is the actual value of the bar, which is also the expense value. So we've got bar height. So that's the bar height is the actual value of the expense. So we're just displaying that value over there. So that, if I save that, then I go into, right, so we've got some weird display at the moment. So what we didn't give is we didn't give the SVG width and height.
So for the view box, we've not fed in the view box. That's why it's come or odd. Otherwise, it will plot it within that the range. So that's what we're going to do now. So if we go back in and go up to where the chart is, so we need to enter the values for the height and width. Okay, so it's height equals height and the width equals width. Now, I'm pretty sure I've used right chart height. Okay, we need chart height. So it's chart height, and the width is bar number one. Width. Okay, so that. So we've got the height and we've got the width. Okay, so chart height. Spelled it wrong. Chart height. Okay, so that looks more like it. Okay, so we got the 6 bars, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the values are looking good because it's put in the values, the expense values at the top, and it's sort of centering it. So all is good. Okay, one thing I forgot to check was see if it was responsive. So I'm just gonna go back and check the responsiveness of the site still. Okay, so it's lovely. So it's resizing as I wanted. Okay, so the bars are even the text is sort of resizing. So because I set the view height as font size is view height, so it's proportional to the view height. So that's pretty good. Okay, so go back. Okay, next we need to do the function for our button. So we've got to set on click. We're going to call this function. So this function is go up line 25. So we've got the function to handle the click. So what we need to do is let me see. We're gonna put in a use effect hook first, okay, to output our data, so that when we change the data, the state of the application changes. Then a use effect will be triggered, and we can output our data, so that it's a sort of an error checking. So that's quite useful to do. So I'm just okay. Next, we need to do our button click function. Okay, so on here, button click, we're going to refresh the chart. So basically, what they're going to do is we're going to create another random set of data, so that our chart gets updated with the new set of bars. Okay, so if I go back up to around line 24, just before that, we're going to first put in a use effect hook. Okay, and here we're going to just output to the console the data values, so that when it gets randomized and we change the data, we want to see it if it's changed. This is for like error checking purposes. So I'm just doing a command called JSON stringify, which if you want to output array data, then you use JSON stringify. So next I go to the refresh chart function. So we'll say let equals then an arrow function, and we want to say new data. We're going to say constant new data equals create random data. So we're saying new data is going to equal a function called create random data, which is up here. So that's and then we're going to set the expenses data. So we're going to set our state for the expenses data to the new data that we've just generated. So what we need to do now is create the function for that create random data. So for that, we're gonna first delete the curly brackets, and we're just gonna do a data map function, which is gonna go through the data array, and then we're just gonna return the name, but we're going to change the expense, and we're going to randomize it, create another random number. So what this is doing is it's going through the array, then it's creating a new array, and when we call it here, this function will get executed and will create new data. So this is a shorthand arrow function here, what I've just typed in. So remember, I didn't have the curly brackets, otherwise you're going to get an error. So we're just doing the shorthand of like putting a data map function there, and that will return the new data. Okay, so and then we need to make sure that you know that the parameter of data is going in as well, because we're calling it with expense data, so there needs to be a parameter there, and then we run through the array and generate new array. Okay, so if I save that and then have a look at app, and if I click on, so it's generating new data. So, and if I go into the debugger and I go console, okay, that's I need to that's error because I use class instead of class name. I should be using class name. That's an easy thing to change. Okay, so if I just clear that and I click on refresh, so it's created 35, 42, 139, 45, 112. So I do it again, and it goes 147, 173, 159, oh sorry, 559, 194, and 6 and 100. So it's outputting it in the use effect hook as well as changing the data. So and we still it's still responsive and there's no errors. Okay, so that's that. Now next thing that we need to do is we're gonna set the name onto the bar chart as well. We currently only got the value, so we're gonna have the name and the value there. I think I missed it earlier, so I'm gonna go down to where our bar chart is, component. Okay, so then I need to put in an expense name equals to, and then curly brackets and data dot name. So I'm going to pull the name out of the data array and pass it through. Okay, so then in the bar component function in line 80, so I'm gonna add the name as well. So it's gonna be dollar curly brackets and expense name. Okay, so note that I've got backticks there, so it's not single quotes. Backticks are used to when you want to output strings in JSX and you want to include variables, then you use backticks. So that's the reason behind that. Okay, so if I save and if I go in, now I've got the name as well now. Okay, the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna highlight the highest bar with the and color it to fill it in with the purple. So 182 would be colored with purple, and 182 will also have the name and the value. All the rest will just have the name. So that because if you put the name on all of them, it gets cluttered. So we just want to have look at the highest one and display with the purple, and then all the rest is just with the values. Okay, so that's what we're going to do next. Okay, now to add the function to get the highest value, we need to go back up now, and okay, around here I think it is. Okay, so we're gonna enter in line 24, calculate the highest expense. So this is the function to do that. So it's going to be a constant, and call it calculate highest expense. And this is it's gonna be an arrow function, and we're gonna be using, and it's gonna return a data reduce. Okay, so what we're doing is we're going through the array and we're reducing it, and that's a function to get a specific value. So what we're going to do is we're going to loop through the values and find out the highest value, and we will return the highest value. So this is the function, the array function that does that. So if I type, okay, so I'm gonna put in the array, and it's got two parameters. The first one is accumulator and the current value. So the accumulator is the value that we're gonna store the highest value, and the current value is when it's looping through the specific value that we're looking at the moment. Okay, so we're gonna put the value into expense, and then we're gonna return expense higher than accumulator, then return expense. So it will compare the current value with the value is stored already. Initially the value is 0, so we've put 0 there, so that's part of the function definition. You can you put in the initial value there, 0, so So we know it's 0, so it will compare it with the current value. So if it's initially 0, so it's always going to be the current value is going to be the highest. Then it will loop through again, and then it will compare it with the next number. If it's higher, then it will return that number. If it's not, then it will it won't make, well, it will return the old number that was there already. So I've got a ternary expression there. So it compares it and returns the current value if it's higher. Otherwise, it returns the old value that was there. So this data reduce will give us the highest value. Okay, so then we need to set the state. We'll create a state variable, highest expense, and we will have a set highest expense as well, and then that will call that function. Okay, so our highest expense will be initialized with by calling the calculate highest value. So it will call that function, and then it will set the highest value. So for this, we will for the initial one. So if the number, we're looking at these numbers 151, 100, so it will return as 182. Now I'm also going to add a console.log to output our highest expense. Okay, so that should, and if I test that out, okay, now I should be able to see it in the console. Alright, so it's got 182, but if I refresh it, it will still be on 182 because I know it's only calculating it in the beginning. So when it initializes, runs for the first time in React, it will calculate that and display it. Now when we refresh the data, we're updating it, but we're not setting the state. So that's the next thing that we need to do. We need to update the state. So we're going to go to our refresh chart data, and then we're going to update the highest value after our refresh. So in this function, we've created a new set of random numbers for our expenses. So create random data. I created a new set of numbers. So we need to calculate the new highest value. So for that, we're going to say a constant highest expense equals calculate highest expense. So we're calling that function that we just created. You go up, so it's going to call that function and calculate a new expense, and then it's going to we need to set that as in our state as well. So we're going to do set highest expense to our new highest expense. That's what we calculated here. So if I do save on that, and I go back, because we've got that console.log there, we should be able to see it update now. So it should update. So initially it will, let me just clear the data. Okay, so if I refresh, okay, so 145, right? So if I click again, 181. which is that one, so that looks right. I'll click again, 188, so that's the highest. So, and 118 is the highest there. Okay, so it's consistent with the chart. So the last thing that we need to do is we need to show the bar in a different color if it's the highest expense. Also, if it's the highest expense, we need to display the name. And if it's not the highest expense, we leave out the name. Okay, so we just have the value. Okay, in order to do that, we go to our function, component function for bar. Okay, and we modify the rectangle SVG JSX that renders out the bar. So we go to the fill first, and in front of it we put in a ternary expression, which is highest expense, and remember 3 equals to, that means it's equal to the value and type, to the height. Okay, so if this is true, then we want to make the color purple. So we'll do a backtick and we'll do purple, and then we do a colon, so as the ternary is, if it's true, then we do a purple, otherwise we do a black. So remember, we've got a colon there and then backticks in black. Okay, so now for the name and value, we need to make a change here. So we put a ternary expression. Okay, so if highest expense equals height, okay, then we if it's true, then we display the name and height. If it's not, then we just do backtick and $, curly brackets, and height. Okay, so let's see what that brings. Okay, that seems to be working. As you can see, we got the highest value, got the name and the value, and all the rest is just value. And we got the color purple for the highest value as well. So if we click again, so we've got electricity 194, okay, and the rest is all lower values, and it's in purple. So do again. So food is 184, and the rest is all low values. We don't display the name. So again, got car, and all the rest is low values. So we can also test the responsiveness. If I minimize and drag the corners, so it's responsive as well. So that completes our React chart. Okay, now we're going to recreate this bar chart in Svelte. Now, in order to do that, we need to install Svelte. Now you can go into the website svelte.dev, and there you have some instructions to install it. Now you can either go into Visual Code and type in npx digit svelte template my Svelte project. This will install a boilerplate app for you, then you can start from there. Or you can download this file and extract it out into the directory that you want to do your coding, then open up in Visual Code. Now there is a third method of running your code. If you go to the top and click on REPL, and if I go back, so I was in here and I went to REPL at the top, and you click on there, and there is a code editor there, so you can do your coding here, and whenever you're ready you can download it onto your PC, or you can create an account and save it here. So either way we can do the code. Now I'm not going to do this method because some people have problems running this code. So to be on the safe side, you can either download this file, this zip file, or you can do the alternative, going into the editor and typing in your code here. And then when you've got it running, you can either download it or save it there. So I'm going to go ahead and download this file. Okay, now I'm going to go to the desktop. I'm going to create a folder called Svelte app. And then I'm going to go into the download folder, and this is the file that we just downloaded, the zip file. So I'm just going to right click and extract all. Then I'm going to browse to the desktop and Svelte app, the folder that we just created. So I'm going to open that up and select folder and just extract it in there. Now we're in Svelte app, so we can go into Visual Code now. And go into File, Open Folder, and Svelte app, select folder. Okay, we've got the template master there. Okay, we can rename that. I'll rename to bar chart app. Okay. Now, in this folder, we have all the files that we need to run an application. So we have the public folder, which has the build files. So once you've finished, once it's compiled, you have all the files here. Then you have your scripts here. These are sort of setup scripts for Svelte. Then in the source file is where we do the coding. Okay, so, and the file structure under the source folder, you have your app.svelte and main.js. Now, just going to close this. Okay. Now, as you can see, app.svelte is the main application component that we're going to be putting our code in. So all the components are named with capital letter, then the name in lowercase. So it's the same format as React.js. So you name your components this way. Now the main.js is, it's like the index.js. This is what puts your components together and for bundling it to the public directory. So I'm going to go back to the app.svelte. Okay, now in Visual Code, you need plugins so that it can recognize the Svelte code syntax. So as you can see, there's no color coding for the tags and JavaScript and CSS. So in order to continue, we need to first go into the plugins and extensions on the left side, and in the extensions search you type in Svelte. And it's the first one that comes up, Svelte for VS Code, and we install the support for the language. Okay, so it's installing. So once installed, then you can go back into your source directory and app. Open up app.svelte. Okay, now you see that the language, the code is recognized and it's color coded, so you can read it better. Okay, the code structure of a Svelte component is you get three parts. You got your script, you got your main part, and then you have your style CSS. So in the main part, you just type in your HTML code, and in the script you put your JavaScript. So in Svelte, most of it's a vanilla JavaScript, but it's got its own little syntax for doing certain things. Okay, next thing we need to do is we need to install our app. Next thing we need to do is we need to run the install. Okay, so all we've done is we copied the templates over for a Svelte app. So it's got a package.json there, so we need to run the install to set up everything. So what I'm going to do is go to terminal, new terminal, and I'm going to cd into bar chart app. So cd bar chart app, press enter. I'm going to do npm install. Okay, so it's finished. So now you can see that we have a nodes modules there. So we're up and running. So I'm just going to close that. Okay, now we can test this out now. To test it out, we can run it on the live server with VS Code, you can either go into npm scripts and run dev. That's what we'll do. Oh. Alternatively, you could have run from the terminal and just run npm run dev. So it says our application is ready. So, and it's running at that port. Now you can do control click and our app is ready. So as you can see, the app is running now. So I'll go back in. Now what we're going to do is we're going to copy the CSS from our React app and just copy and paste it into here, because we're going to use the same styles and we're going to have the same markup. So, and we can copy most of the JavaScript over as well. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to try and make use of reuse all the code in React, then do the adjustments and tweak it to make it run properly. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go File, Open, and open the React the app.css in the React application. So go to bar chart demo. That's our React app, and I'm going to open up the style sheet, the app.css. Okay, so I'm just gonna split the screen. Okay, so I've got close that. Okay, so I've got app.svelte on the left side, and I've got the app.css of the React on the right hand side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy everything from the React side. That's all the styles. So just to highlight and copy, and then just going to close that. Then I'm going to paste it in between the style tags in the Svelte app.svelte. Okay, so just Control P. Okay, so now we have all the styles for our app. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to copy over the JavaScript. Okay, so I'm going to go back in File, Open, and we're going to open the app.js in our React app. So we're going to source. So that's app.js. So just split the screen again. Okay, so okay, so we got the app.svelte on the left side. Let me just minimize this. Okay, app.svelte on the left side, and I've got the app.js on the right side for the React. So we can now, all the JavaScript for the Svelte app is going to be in between these tags. So if I go through from the top on the React side, so I can just do a straight copy of our data, expenses for the month data, just do a copy and paste. then now we're gonna have everything in between here we can start copying as well. Okay, so these are all our initialization variables and constants and functions. So I'm gonna copy that over. Okay, so next. Okay, so next I'm going to calculate the highest expense for the month. Okay, so I'm gonna copy that over. Okay, then I've got the. Now, before we continue, just wanna go back. We've got the data hit there. Okay, then in the React side, we've got use state. Now, use state is not relevant in Svelte. So all we're doing here is we're setting a state for expense data, and we're setting it to data. So we can just we're gonna have the constant, but we're just gonna have a variable that equals to data. Okay. So I mean, some of the things that we're doing, it's not efficient, but we can refactor it later to make it more efficient. But so we're just making sure that we're going to get something that will work. Okay, so that will solve that problem. So we have any state variables, we need to change that. Okay, so the next thing, so all these are okay, there's no state variables in there. Okay, the next one is, if I go back into the React side, I've got constant, and that's setting the state as well. So what I'm doing is, so let me see what I can do for that. So we got highest expense, and we're setting the state. So we're saying let it's constant. So we're saying constant high expense equals so we can say that so we just change that to, there's an error there. So we're just saying that constant expense equals whatever that value is when you run it through. We calculate the highest expense, and the parameter we're putting through is data, and it's not data, it's, well, we can put in data or expense data. So we're putting through expenses data. Okay. So we've changed that. So the next thing is use effect. Okay, we're not going to, there's a way to do that, we'll leave that for the time being. So we're going to copy the next, create random numbers. Okay, we're going to straight copy that. Okay. Now the next part is we're saying let refresh chart equals. Okay, so this is the button click which is associated with that button. Okay, so you can copy that over, reuse that. Just save that. Okay, we've got no errors. So that's okay. Okay, we've got Svelte unused CSS selector. Highest expense before. Okay, that's okay. Got some CSS. Is there anything else? So we got all CSS. Svelte name is not defined. Okay, so it's all CSS related, alright. And okay, so we've copied everything over. Now we're gonna concentrate on the markup. Okay, so in the markup we're going to have, we're going to start off with a div with id equals root. Okay, and we're going to put our marker for the app in between this, because in React there is a root div, and I've used that just in the style sheet. So to be consistent, see, I've used that ID with root. So I've used that as the root div. So I'm going to use that as the wrapper. Okay, now if we go back in, now in Svelte, we're not going to have JSX, so we can just put it as one flat markup block here. So we're going to reconstruct the JSX from here. So if I go into the app.js in the React, so I can lift this part for the chart. The chart component has this JSX, so I can lift that straight out and copy. And before that, I think we need to go to the main section. All right. Okay, the main app has JSX. So we can lift that out. JSX, put it in between there. Okay, then we got the SVG, which is there, but we don't need that, so we're just gonna copy the SVG. Alright, that is from the chart component, and we'll just drop it there. Okay. So this SVG, so we don't need that. We're going to put, okay, leave that for the time being. I'm going to come back to that. After the SVG, we have the button. Okay, so there's a button. Copy. So after the SVG, we got the button. Okay, so now we need to paste in okay, I'm trying to think. Okay, so we're just gonna put in a div with rectangle x equals 0, y equals 0, and width equals 100, and height equals 50. Equals 50. Okay, so we're just doing this for testing purposes. Okay, so I'm gonna save this, and the width here. Just want to make sure that, because in our initialization variables and constants, we got a width there. Okay, and we have a height somewhere as well. So it's chart height. Okay, we've got chart height there, and so we've got width and the chart height. So we've got width and we've got a chart height. So if I save this and I go into there, alright. So everything we copied over, it's been fine. So there's no errors. So as you can see, it's displayed a canvas, SVG canvas, with the dimensions of that we've given, and it's also displayed one rectangle. So this is like the first step. We know that the code that we copied so far works. Now the next phase will be to go through each of the data, then display each of the bars from bottom up. Remember, SVG, the coordinate system, starts from top left, and so we need to calculate, need to do a calculation for it to be displayed from the bottom up. So if I go back to the code and the section 557 to 69, 70. That's mapping through our expenses data. As you can see, the expenses data there, and it's doing a map command, and then it's going through each expense and it's returning the bar. Okay, so there is a calculation there. Bar index times bar width, bar margin, that's the x coordinates, and the height, which is chart height minus bar height. So this will work out the x and y coordinates, and the width is bar width, and height is bar height. They were the initialized variables that we declared here. Okay. So what we can do is so here you can see that so if I go to the browser, you can see here that we've displayed the SVG canvas that will contain the chart, the bar charts, and we've also hard-coded a rectangle just to see how it appears. So the code is working, and what we need to do now is we need to plot the individual bars. We need to go through the data and display each bar from the bottom up. So there's some calculations involved, so we've got to copy those calculations over and make sure that the bars are rendered correctly. So back to the code. On the right hand side we've got the React app.js file, and what I'm highlighting is the code that renders the bar. So here you can see we've got expense data dot map. Now what that is doing is going through each data item and returning an SVG bar element. So what we need to do is we look at the JSX file here for the command component function. So this is what it's returning. So the thing to note here is we've got these props that we're passing down, and here we've got, for the X we've got a formula, and for the Y we have a formula. Well, it's a calculation, chart height minus bar height. So in here we've called it something different. So locally it's called different things, X, Y, width, height. So knowing that, we can copy this section over. So I'm just copying all of that and I'm going to drop it, replacing that rectangle. So I'm going to copy it over, and I'm going to delete this, and replace it with this. Okay, we've copied the section for the bar over. So this will render the bar, one bar. So we need to go through each data and then work out the x, y, width, height. So the first thing is in Svelte we need to find an equivalent map function. So in this section we can add curly brackets hash each, and then we need to tell it what data to use, expense data. Okay, so we're going to map through, or go through each expenses data, and as data comma index. So it's going to map through each, and then we're going to have access to the data and the index value. And we end the each loop here, and each. So slash each will end the each loop. Now we need to replace the x value, the y value, the width and the height. Okay, so if we go back to our React app.js, we can go to the chart component and look at the props, what it's passing down. So in the x value, for the x value, we've got index times bar width and bar margin. So the bar width and bar margin is defined in the initialization, bar width and bar margin. Okay, so we can copy that over and replace the x value there. So now it's going to do that calculation to work out the x value. Now for the y value, we go back, got chart height and bar height. Now chart height is defined in the initialization. Okay, so their chart height equals, right? So, but the bar height, it's calculated. So if we go down, and put then chart. So yeah, the bar height is calculated, well not calculated, it is actually the data expense. So we can access data expense, so this will be replaced by data expense. So you can just say chart height, we just copy chart height. And we say minus expense, minus expenses, sorry, it should be data dot expenses expense. Okay, so now we've got the width. Now the width is calculated, let's just see. We go back to the bar function, the width is width, so we go to the chart component, width is bar width, so that's what we're going to use. So we just refer to it as bar width. So width is bar width. Now the height is expense data dot expense, like we have here, data expense here, and for this you need to change that to expense data dot expense. Okay, so that takes care of the bar. Okay, we can test that out. Okay, I'm just gonna comment that out and save, and let's just see. Okay, so it's displaying the bars. So what we've done so far has not produced any errors. So I'm gonna uncomment this section, the text part. Right, so now we've got to do the text part. So again, so we're going to replace the x value with index star margin. So just going to copy that, copy, now then we're going to replace the width. It's going to be the bar width, bar width. Okay, now the y value is equal to, so it's calculated with, well, it's the actual data dot expense is data dot expense. Okay, so this section is displaying the text on your bar chart. So we got this section now. So the height, I'm going to replace height with data dot expense. Now the expense name is data dot name. Now the height is data dot expense, and same goes here, data dot expense. So if I save that, go there. Okay, there's something wrong. It's not. It's labeling it, but it's not. It's not put in the proper position for it. Now this is okay. Okay, I actually got the y value wrong, because y value is chart height minus data expense. So just got to put that in. Chart height minus. Okay, so if I save that. Okay, so it's got the chart correctly, but there's little things here. So it's not centered, so that's the next thing that we need to tackle. Now, the reason why it's not centered is this CSS is applies to everything between the body, and we can't select the body in our CSS because of the way Svelte components are built. It's specific to the component. So to refer to the body from a particular component, you need to put colon global brackets and same with the HTML. So it's global so again the HTML and the body it cannot be styled within components. It's the way Svelte is structured, the architecture. So in order for you to target the body or the HTML, you need to put in colon global body. So it's some sort of, it's a little bit of a hack, but there's probably better ways of doing this, but for this example, I think it should be okay. So if I go back, okay, now everything is centered. So we've got little formatting issues here. The refresh is not working, okay, and the legend is not styled. Not styled because we're referring to class name here, because I copied React JSX code, so I need to just change that so it's just class, because class name is the JSX term. So if I do save, okay, so that's styled. Okay, next we'll concentrate on the button. Okay, so the button, there's nothing happening when I click on the button. Okay, so if I go back in, so in React we have on click. So in Svelte you refer to it as on colon click. So save that. Okay, so there may be other things that we need to do. Okay, so it's calling refresh chart. So we've copied refresh chart over. Okay, so I copied all that code over. So now we need to do a little bit of refactoring here. So here we are saying new data equals create random data. So, and then we're say new highest expense equals calculate expense data. And then we're setting the state. Okay, so remember we copied this from React, so we don't need to work with state. So we can just say expense data, expenses data equals create expenses data. Okay, so that will create a new expenses data, right? So we don't need that. And the same goes for calculate highest expense. So we just say highest expense equals calculate and it's expense data. Expenses data. Okay, so, and I don't need that because that's setting the state for new highest expense. So we're not dealing with states. So we're just going to reassign new values to these variables that we're using. So that okay, I forgot one thing. These are not constants, they're declared already and they're not constants, so they're just got to make sure they're okay. And also I spelled that wrong, it's expense. Okay, so now if I go back up, just check what these are. Alright, expenses, it should be let, because I'm going to change the value for this. Let expense equals data. Okay, then I need to look for highest. Okay, highest expense equals. Okay, so I need to make that let as well. If I save that, okay, so if I refresh now and click on the refresh button, it's updating the chart. That's what we wanted to do. So I just changed the constant to a let because we're changing the value. So it's just a little silly mistake. And the other place, yeah, there. So let I've changed that as well and misspelled that. Okay, so that's working. So that's our Svelte chart finished. Okay, so if I can minimize the window and just drag the corner just to test out the responsiveness. See there, it's responsive as well.
So sometime in the future I'm going to be doing a Vue version of this. It should be similar to a Svelte version, so it shouldn't be that difficult. So thanks for watching, and join me for the next video very soon.